Hello. It looks like we're ready to go. Um, so let me introduce myself. My name is Colin Hammond. I've been around a bit of an odd serial entrepreneur myself, having started a few businesses, sold a couple, and I'm currently running two at the moment. One is called I Am Fine, which is a service for people who live alone. That's a B2C proposition, and that's mostly delivered online. And sort of my pride and joy now, which is ScopeMaster, which is a tool for software, improving software projects. And I've been in software for most of my career, so I thought I'd share. I thought I'd share a few thoughts about software, as so many startups depend on software to be competitive. And I thought I'd spend the next 15 minutes just sharing some thoughts on that, and just helping you get your software initiatives onto a great start. So, what we find is that most organizations, whether they've been around for many years or not, or whether they're new ones coming along, the successful delivery of software is the key to thriving or surviving. And the speed at which you can deliver that software really is essential and really matters. And some of the older organizations out there who are slow to deliver new software are going to find themselves on the back foot more and more. So some of the older institutions whose coffers are not too full, but they've got lots of legacy systems, may find themselves struggling to keep up. Now, one of the great things about startups is that they tend to start small. So the software aspect of, if there is one in your startup, will be a relatively modest, modest in size, or most likely modest in size. But for the larger organizations that try to attempt large software projects, this data from the Standish group, known as the Chaos Report, tells us that really over the last 15 or so years, the situation really hasn't improved very much. And at least 20% or close to 20% of projects fail completely. And most of them do that after blowing their own budget. So what we want to do is to make sure that your software project, if there is software part of your startup, is in a good place, so as not to fail or even to struggle. And the number one thing you can do there is keep it small. The smaller you start, the more likely it is to be successful. It's the large projects that really struggle. So keep it small, keep it simple, keep it straightforward, and then we'll go from there. So, the USA alone spends about 420 billion each year on enterprise and software projects, and a large proportion of that is about people's time and effort. And of that time and effort, we see that about 60% is spent on finding and fixing bugs, often typically before the first release is issued. And so not only are we delayed in delivering the software because of the bugs, but the business benefits are held back as well. But this is a serious problem, and this is just the numbers for the USA. If you look around the world, it's probably many times this. So in terms of a market opportunity, fixing bugs in one way or another, or fixing them early, is a big issue. Now, we've examined lots of software projects, and we've examined the writings of other people who have done the same. And it turns out that most of the work that gets done in software is to test that the code matches the requirements. But quite often that's not the case. Quite often it's the requirements themselves or other aspects of the software project which are the root cause of problems found once that software is exposed to the customer. And it's all very well testing that the code matches the requirements, but if the requirements themselves are wrong, then you're onto a bad foot. So we've been working with these numbers because they're based on years of data. But actually, as recently as last week, Accenture reported that the root cause of failures that they're seeing in production is as much as 35% are attributable to requirements. So just testing the code alone is not going to get rid of those defects. So what is needed is something that finds problems in requirements, or what we call shift left testing. So we're testing that the requirements are any good. And that's where our own invention, ScopeMaster, comes in. We started this journey about 3.5, 4 years ago, looking at how could we analyze requirements and help improve their quality and estimation and so on. And we invented this tool that analyzes the text of software requirements. So whether you use a tool or not, it pays to have good requirements. Just not comprehensive necessarily, but start with something that's clear and straightforward that everybody shares a common understanding of. Now, most projects these days are delivered, software projects are delivered in an agile way, which typically means that the requirements are light touch, written on a card, and they describe the high level experience of a user. And they start with this format: as a kind of user, I want to do this. There's additional information on the back of the card, whether it's electronic or whether it's posted on a wall, that says how we're going to check that this functionality has been delivered. And what our software does is it analyzes this text, looks at the words, looks at the intent behind the words, looks at the meaning and the relationships of the words. And this is sort of the who and the what of the user story, or user story or requirement. And it is the foundation of a good requirement. You have to get this right. The acceptance criteria comes afterwards, but you've got to get this bit right. If you don't, bad things will happen. So a good requirement has to have a value, has to have some merit, has to have some business purpose. So think about that. And of course, how do you verify that this piece of software has been delivered, or this functionality has been delivered once it's been built? Now, there's a big difference between a good requirement or good user story and a bad one. And it's really easy to turn your good ones into bad ones, or just to leave them as bad in the first place. But it's well worth the effort to refine them and get them into a really good state. One of the reasons is we've analyzed over 100,000 requirements and found that every word of a requirement or a user story, on average, generates about 125 coding words or tokens. So if you make a mistake with your requirement, that will get amplified 125-fold. So it really does pay to spend a little bit of extra time on your requirements. Make sure that they're really clear, and then that will avoid wasted work later. Now, this is the fundamental theme of my talk today, is to get your requirements right, and talk about how and why, really. If you're trying to correct a problem that has been introduced in your requirements, and you're fixing it much later in the life cycle of your project, it becomes extraordinarily expensive to fix later. If you fix a requirements problem when you're writing the requirements, it takes a few minutes or a few dollars to resolve. If you're fixing that problem once it's hit production, it could cost you customers, it could cost you market opportunity, and a lot more time, effort, and money. So if you want to make your requirements good, you want to have some good quality criteria. And this is our favorite list of 10 criteria for great requirements or great user stories. And using the tool that we've invented will help you get to good much quicker, much more quickly. So and when we came up with the tool, I gave it to one of the smartest guys I know, who's been in IT for nearly 55 years. And he was very excited. He said, "This is one of the most exciting things I've seen in my career, in that it's able to find and fix problems early." And this even applies to larger projects as well. So as an entrepreneur and something of an inventor here, I was so excited to get this kind of endorsement. And he's been very helpful throughout that journey. And it's really useful, perhaps in any startup, is to get that kind of endorsement from an external expert, and try and surround yourself by other people that believe in your journey. And I did the same here. This was another expert in the field of requirements, software requirements, and he was quite skeptical when I first showed him the tool, and 2 weeks later he asked if he could invest in the company. So he too is, surround yourself by people who believe in what your endeavor is, and that will keep your motivations and your spirits up. So just to reinforce this message about getting your quality in early, whenever we're delivering some software, whether it's a key part of your delivery or whether it's just a small aspect of what your business proposition is, whatever money you spend, or time, effort, and money you spend on delivering some software as part of your proposition, the longer term benefit of it needs to vastly exceed the cost of it. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it at all. But what's really key is the speed. If you can deliver that functionality in a few months, then your longer term benefit could be quite substantial. But if you miss that timeline for whatever reason, for example, your requirements are poor and it causes a lot of confusion and delay, then your longer term benefit is significantly reduced and disproportionately reduced. You might spend an extra 10% on delivery, but lose 50% in your longer term business benefit. And so nowadays, the cost of delay is a really key aspect of delivering good quality software quickly. So anything that can reduce the cost of delay is important. Or another way of looking at it, in most innovative software implementations, we have a life cycle where we spend some time developing some software. Then once we launch it at this breakpoint here, we start to see some benefits. We hit a break-even point where the cost to develop it has been covered by the revenue that we've generated, and then everything else thereafter is it's what we're in business for. Really, is to get some financial value from it, or it could be other kinds of value that you get from your project or product. But if for some reason, particularly if your requirements are poor, your development is slightly delayed, you might, instead of being the innovator in your marketplace, you might be playing catch up. And no matter how much better your product is than the guys that were first in the field, it may well be that playing catch up is just unfeasible. Your cost to deliver is longer. Your break-even point is further to the right because you're earning less revenue because they got the market advantage. And so the real cost of that modest delay, if it's a competitive situation, could be quite substantial. So think about scaling down your scope so that you can develop something and get it out to market in high quality early, and see if that's really see if that's going to be your winning solution. You can enhance it later and maintain competitive advantage in the future. So if you haven't got the message so far, the issue of quality, not only in the code but the requirements, really matters. So if you start your coding work with poor quality requirements, you are going to waste time and money. Or the other way around it is, the other way of looking at it is that it's when you look at the business value and the cost of delay, the time is usually much more critical than the development cost. Being first to market with some kind of innovation is crucial. So drawing this talk to a close, remember that the speed of delivery of software will affect your bottom line, especially if you're in an innovative space or you're delivering some software to meet some kind of deadline, that, let's say, a financial or legislative deadline. You want to get your software out well in time for that deadline. Speed really matters. Of course, the quality has to be right too. And so by containing the scope and having a really good scope, a really good set of requirements, you'll be able to deliver higher quality faster. Poor requirements is a major factor in both quality and speed. And as we saw from the Accenture's data, as much as 35% of defects in production are caused by poor requirements. And the other message, of course, is that if you're fixing these requirements problems after you've started coding, you often have to go back and do an awful lot of extra work. Whereas if you'd fix the problems, nip them in the bud, fix them early, you'd have done yourself a great favor. So put some effort into your requirements. Now, I couldn't finish this talk without a little bit of a pitch for what we're doing here at ScopeMaster. We've invented this requirements analyzer, so it analyzes the text of your software requirements or your software user stories, and we've got some great accreditations from the industry, and we're still really starting to get noticed. The reason being is the value of getting these requirements right pays huge dividends, and we're fortunate to be in a space where currently there appears to be nobody else doing the same as we are, and we're very excited about our future. So thank you very much for listening. If you have some questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. No questions so far. So this wasn't your traditional investor pitch. We're not in a hurry to look for investment just at this point in time. We are just looking to get our name out and to help folks along the way. If should someone so the question is, should someone wait for release? I'm going to take it by that. What you're saying is, should you wait to release your software until it's of adequate quality? The answer is yes. The first time any customer see your software, you want it to be pretty good quality. So the strong message is reduce the scope of your first release. And once you've done that, but make sure it's really good quality. And we've made that mistake on a previous previous business. We were so excited about what we thought our technology could do that we showed it to all of our friends and potential investors. And what am I seeing here? Colin, please take it from your slide. I have an issue on my audio. Okay, so another question. Wait for release product before going out in the market to raise funds. Well, I can't really argue too much for that. We've done both. We've released a product and attained some success with raising some funds, and then after releasing the product, and then in another business we did it before we released the product. So the opportunity is both ways, but as a general rule of thumb, I would say get your requirements really clear. Keep the initial scope of your launch as small as possible, so long as it gets the message across of what you're trying to do, and but keep the quality up, and then build upon that functionality as you go. Any more questions? What would be your advice on launching with less features to get to market first, especially if trying to be the first for a new innovation? Such as the current pandemic situation. Yeah, so there is a fine line, isn't there, between time to market and getting your message out. I think in my own experience, it would ring true that if you're selling B2B, it's great to have a customer already ready to buy your product. And don't be too frightened if you have a customer ready to buy your product, even if it's not finished, then you're in a much stronger position than if you are launching a product, all your potential competitors can see it and copy it, and then you're a little bit exposed, and you could find yourself missing out on that opportunity. So there are many factors to take into account, and it depends on what kind of marketplace you're in. Will the scoping, another question here, will the scoping be based on the software technology framework? So one of the fascinating things about requirements is that requirements written from a user's point of view are agnostic to technology, or should be agnostic to technology. So it really shouldn't matter what technology framework you use. Your requirements should, the fundamentals of your requirements, so what the user is, who the user is and what they want to do with it, should be irrelevant of the technology. In fact, they should explicitly exclude any reference to the technology. Now, that said, if you are very familiar, or your developers are very familiar with a coding framework or a technology, and they wish to, and they're using that framework, that can accelerate delivery and accelerate delivery of high quality software. So, for example, if you're delivering a web app and you're using a framework such as Bootstrap, which gives you lots of features very quickly without a lot of drama, then using those kind of frameworks and tools will accelerate delivery of impressive and good quality software. But that requires a prior knowledge by the developers of those frameworks. If you're hoping to learn a framework and at the same time as developing with it, then that's not the place you want to be, or not the place you want to be in. You want to already know those frameworks, or hire a developer who does already know those, so that they can be really efficient with it. Any more questions? No, that seems to be it. Well, unless anybody comes up with any more questions in the next few seconds, I shall be around this conference, and we have a stand, as it were, a virtual stand. So please do come over and have a chat with me. If you want to know anything more about our technology, visit ScopeMaster.com. And if not, I wish you the greatest luck with your initiative. So thanks for listening.